Hey there, Richard here from Escapist CrossFit, and today we're going to talk about the 4 pillars of health and what comes on top of those pillars, of course. So the first pillar we're going to talk about, and I'm going to draw it here so it's easy to see. We have a pillar here, and we have sleep. Yeah, big surprise. But yes, it's one of the most underestimated things that people are not taking care of. When we're talking about sleep, we would like to see people sleeping about 7.5 to 8 hours a night, or 7 till 8. There are some special unicorns out there that can sleep maybe 6.5 hours, but studies show that anyone that is sleeping less and then this will actually have huge cognitive disadvantages compared to if he would sleep enough. There's a lot of like urban legends out there, like or attitudes like I can manage on 5 hours, I can manage on 6 hours, I'm just good, and so on. But again, science does not confirm that. Like there's not a single specimen you can see that, oh, he actually performs just as well on 4 hours sleep. It doesn't happen. There are other parts to it that are important, not only the cognitive things, but also what happens to us like hormonally, is that one very strong hormone, insulin, for example, goes up. And this is not very beneficial if you want to lose weight, but it's also not so beneficial if you, if you want to perform. So you want to keep your insulin regulated to whatever you eat, and not have insulin just getting high due to lack of sleep. And combined with that, you also have cortisols, and cortisol is, a stress hormone, and obviously this is going to also impair your decision making and so on when you are sleep deprived. So there are a bunch of more reasons why you should sleep, but basically you want to get your sleep in. Just to make it easy, we can say 7 to 8 hours. What is the perfect number? That's something that you need to discover yourself. Myself, I know about 8 hours. I feel a bit sluggish, so maybe 7 hours is a bit better for me. Okay, that's the first pillar. Then we have our second pillar, something that we talk about a lot, of course, is nutrition. And no surprise, nutrition is our fuel. That's what fuels us, and it's one of the most neglected things when it comes to having any kind of issues with your mood, with your also affecting your sleep. It affects your performance. It affects how your skin looks like. It affects your hair. It affects basically all parts of our body. Well, no wonder. I mean, it is the things that builds you up. So the things we put inside our mouth is actually the thing that creates our skin. So think about nutrition as your fuel, and you want to have the best fuel inside. And the problem right now in the modern society is that most of us get too much of processed foods inside ourselves. And what are processed foods? Well, anything that really has a label on it is a processed food. If it has like, this includes X amount of stuff, well, that's usually a good indicator that it's processed. And we should stay away from those things. What else should you think about? Like the regular let's say recipe of CrossFit, we say, eat meat, vegetables, nuts and seeds, some starch, and no sugar. And if you do that, you're gonna do very well. There are some caveats. People are sensitive to this, sensitive to that, but basically those things will keep you safe. And also something that has become a bit more commonly now due to let's say, very effective documentaries is also saying that meat would be bad, but meat is pretty good, and obviously having good source meat is going to be even better. So for performance, having good nutrition will have a massive impact, but also, again, for your mood, for your output, also in cognitive output. So whatever you put inside your mouth is also going to be the things that are building yourself up. And we have, chronic disease is taking up 80%, I would say almost 90% of everything that happens in the hospitals nowadays. And we could just mitigate that if we would have better nutrition. So our third pillar is, another surprise, training. And training is obviously physical activity, and what this includes is not only some jogging and running, but you also need to do strength training. You need to do some power training. Basically all the things we do in CrossFit gives you that tool set of things you can use your body with, and especially use your joints as they are built to be used. Being able to hang, being able to push, being able to squat, being able to lift. All those things are physical skills that you need outside the gym. And this is why it's so important that you also maintain that and train. And the more people are sitting in home office, working at desks, the more they will need to do this also. But we see the trend is going the opposite way, and what we want to focus on is creating that movement, and you want to do it as regular as possible. What is the perfect dose? In my opinion, you should be doing something every day. That doesn't mean you go flat out 100% every day, not at all. You should have the intensity today of your training so you can keep on training tomorrow and the day after that forever. And that's the physical activity you want to have. Some days you're going to push it a bit more, some days you're going to take it down a bit more. And for those who have more experience with this, you know exactly what I'm talking about. For you people that are a bit more inexperienced, it sounds a lot, but it really isn't. So you have to think about it like almost like how much time you spend watching, I don't know, Netflix, for example. For you, maybe 1 hour of Netflix watching doesn't sound much, and that's kind of the same concept, that watching a 1 hour Netflix or train for 1 hour every day, what's the difference? It's the same time. The only difference is that your training is actually going to improve every part of your life. Netflix, probably not. Sorry, Netflix. Okay, we agreed on training is awesome for us, and it makes us feel good, makes us healthier all over. We have our fourth pillar, which is also sometimes neglected, and that's community. Having a belonging to something, to a group, having strong bonds to your family, to your friends is super, super important for our health. So you can do experiments where you have people spending all their time in these three pillars. Their health is not going to be as good as if they would have somebody to talk with and have support from. And also, we are social animals. I think it's always very interesting to think about that. Even in the worst case scenario, where you have the worst kind of people around yourself in a prison, you'd rather spend time with murderers and really bad people instead of being in solitary and in your own cell. So that tells me a lot about how important it is to actually have connections. And there are also very interesting studies where, I'm blanking on the name of the study, but they basically looked at people and they mapped their network, and they did like all these connections between people. And they saw that people that had the most connections were the healthiest, and they were also the richest. The people that were here far out and have few connections. Oh, there's also one other thing. Obesity was at the highest at the outskirts of these networks. So you want to think about having deep connections with more people. And if we look at our gym, what we can control and what we can do is obviously we can do nutrition, we can do training, and we can do community. We can also track our sleep. Obviously, we're not going to sleep in the gym, but at least that's something we can track. And these pillars are building up our health, but also something else very important, and that is our mind. So the pillars here are actually supporting our well-being in our mind as well. And this is why it's so important to have all these things dialed in. Sleep we can measure, nutrition we can measure, training we can measure, our community, like how many contacts we have, we can measure. Our mind and our health in our mind is a bit harder to measure, but we know how we feel. And when we think about happiness, happiness is not so much about just walking around being happy all the time, but it's to actually have enough challenges, if it's social challenges, physical challenges, that are the things that are going to create our strong mind. And nutrition and sleep are very important to get the chemicals right in your brain, so you're not, in a disadvantage just because your chemicals are not set up right. Eating processed foods, for example, has a terrible impact on your mind. Sleeping too little has a terrible impact on your mind. It creates depression and all that stuff. And basically, if we take anything of this away, it creates stress, bad stress for our mind, and we want to create as much good stress as possible. And if you need any help, or if you have any thoughts about this, feel free to reach out, because I think these are very important topics to get on. It's simplified, and we can talk about a bit more how we can measure and everything, but I hope this gives you a better picture of where we want to go and our goal with what we're doing. Okay, thank you for watching, and see you next time.